Hi and welcome to From Many People's Strength, the podcast that covers Saskatchewan politics and current events. My name is Cory and my pronouns are he and him.
And my name is David and my pronouns are they, them, or he, him.
And I guess we have a few stories this week.
Yeah, a lot of them, again, sort of the theme of the year, theme of the last 2 years, are of course COVID related. It's COVID. As is always, it is the elephant in the room for news, probably in most places, but definitely the news in Saskatchewan. So
no matter what you do, it informs exactly everything that's going on right now.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to the day when that is irrelevant. I guess we had a little chunk of time a few months ago where it seemed like we weren't talking about it nearly all that often. Like 80% of our down. 80% of our conversations had nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
So before we get too far, happy anniversary. This is our 1 year of having done this. So I think we're up around show number high 30s, something like that, because we were weekly for a while and then we switched to bi-weekly and we missed a couple here and there. But
this is episode 37.
37, okay.
Yeah.
It's kind of a weird number for it being a 1 year anniversary, but is what it is. Happy Thanksgiving as well.
Yeah, that's right. Happy Thanksgiving. If you like what we do, make sure to share it around. I'm sure other Saskatchewan people need a more progressive take on things to know they're not the only one in their group.
What, are you saying that the majority of people talking about politics in this province aren't progressive?
Well, it sounds like that.
Who would have imagined? Who could have ever thought that was the case?
Yeah, that's right. So,
speaking of which,
screaming into the void.
Yeah.
Sask Human Rights Code won't accommodate people refusing vaccination due to personal preference. So the Sask Human Rights Commission just said they're not accepting your complaints about not wanting to get vaccinated.
Yep.
So,
and I don't think anyone, well, no one should be surprised by this.
You wouldn't think so.
Yeah, it's like I can understand. I can understand anyone wanting to be wary of government overreach.
Right.
So I get that. But this isn't a protected status, right? The article that you shared does talk about the things that are protected statuses, which identifiable group categories fall under human rights, and not wanting to get medicine isn't one of them. And more importantly, no one's being forced to get the vaccine. I think if something came out where the government was forcing people to get it, I probably would be a lot more inclined to support those who say, no, I have ethical or moral reasons, heck, even religious reasons, as long as it was part of the broader moral or ethical category, for not getting this.
They're not taking you to the vaccine clinic and sticking a needle in your arm against your will.
Right. So like at this point, it is not a case of you being forced to do something. It's you aren't allowed to do this dangerous thing where you could harm others. And we've got lots of things that say that. You're not allowed to speed, right? Like, I can't go to the Human Rights Commission and say it is a violation. The speed limits are a violation of my human rights because of the right to free travel, right? Like we have a right to free travel. That is a constitutionally enshrined right, mobility, the right to move. That I can't go to a Human Rights Commission and say my right to mobility and my right to free travel is being impinged because of these speeding limits, because they'll come back and say, no, that's a reasonable limit on your rights because you exercising that rights at speeds above the limit put other people at danger. And this falls into the same category. I went to a store today. They needed to see my vaccine verification when I went. And, it was a liquor store, so they needed to see my ID as well, to prove I was the right age. And they compared the two. Like, I've had to show ID, I haven't had to show ID at the liquor store for a while now because I look ancient. But you had to show ID at liquor stores for a long time. Having to show an extra piece is not a violation of rights. So, no, that's right. I was thinking the other day though, and this is again, maybe a little bit coming a further afield from, the specific story, but related to COVID and related to people who have these deeply held beliefs that they don't want to get vaccinated. If someone is an anti-vaxxer and gets sick and goes into the hospital, and needs treatment, every single doctor that I have ever met in my life is still going to treat them to the best level of care possible. They are still going to receive care, no matter what level of political beliefs this person has or anti-vax beliefs this person has. And then, doctors and nurses I know are moral stalwarts on that. However, the one circumstance in which they won't is if care is denied by a competent adult. So I think one of the things these anti-vaxxers should do is start ensuring they have advanced care directives that say they want to refuse care from any doctor who believes in vaccines. Yeah. I think that would be a really important step that they can do to, solidify their beliefs, because the doctors themselves are not going to deny them care unless they are specifically told that the patient is choosing to deny care. Yeah. So I really think that, if they're worried about all of these doctors who are just shills for the pharmaceutical industry, all these doctors that they don't trust, the 98% of doctors who believe in vaccines, they should, if they're really concerned that these doctors don't have their best interests in mind, they should take the bold step and explicitly deny care from any doctor or healthcare professional that believes in vaccines. I think that would be a way of really ensuring that they're protected from these doctors. So if they do go into cardiac arrest, they should say, no, I don't want resuscitation if the person doing the resuscitation believes in vaccines. Because who knows, they might do some sort of healthcare procedure that goes against.
Well, that's right.
Yeah. So.
It makes me think of a conversation I had with one of these conspiratorial type people who said that hospitals were actually killing people with the ventilators. Yeah. So if you believe that, then you have to have a strategy in place to make sure that when you go in and can't breathe because you're sick, somebody you care for is going to say to the doctor, no, you can't put them on a ventilator. Yeah.
Well, and not just somebody you say for, you should make sure you have an advanced care directive in place, because if it's just some random person saying it.
Yeah, no, that's
right. Get something in writing, that says you wish to deny all medical treatment from anyone who believes in, vaccines and that believes COVID is real. Yep. So just to keep yourself safe.
That's right.
I understand I'm being a bit of an ass.
It sounds a little bit.
My patience is getting pretty fucking thin with these yahoos.
Yeah, I can understand that.
I think we all are. And again, part of why I'm saying it the way I am is because I do know that they are creating this burden on our healthcare system. And I also know that the healthcare professionals we have, like I said, won't deny them care. They will still get the best treatment possible. And because of that, it's straining our system even further, and putting the lives of others at risk even more, because there are people who do end up in the hospital now for completely non-COVID related reasons. And because of strains on healthcare systems, that is impacting the care that they can receive. So, it's not moving away from COVID. It's a similar topic, but it's a specific one that, I think is interesting. And this one does sort of skirt the line a bit, because now we are looking at, the courts stepping in and requiring a medical treatment.
Yeah.
The difference being it's a conflict between two parents. So it is not just
underage
an adult
daughter. 13 years old, I believe she is. Judges ruled the 13-year-old child of divorced Saskatoon parents should be vaccinated against COVID-19 despite legal opposition from the girl's mother. So the dad wants her to get vaccinated. The mother doesn't. And then at one point, the daughter was on board with the vaccination. And then after receiving all this misinformation from her mother, it then decided she didn't want it. But now the court is saying that she has to have it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And there's this isn't the only story of a similar nature. Like if you open the story itself, there's the embedded link of a similar case in Quebec where it wasn't the parent, but it was a child, 12-year-old themselves was wanting it and their parents preventing, and the child was allowed to get it. So we're like, there are some gray area cases. There are cases on the edges on this where we do have to examine sort of the interplay between the rights of parents and the rights of a child and how those are balanced and who is the final arbiter of that and how do we protect children from caregivers who may not have their best interest in heart. Things like that become challenging and become gray areas that I don't envy any judge having to rule over. But at the end of the day, this is a medical treatment that saves lives.
That's right.
And I think in the one in Saskatchewan specifically, from everything I've seen in the article, the mother was not able to overcome the overwhelming evidence within the trial. So, or hearing, I guess, not a trial, but
I think, I know like we have these edge cases and kind of gray areas, but at some point the facts that Pfizer, the vaccines are safe and help prevent illness has to play against the non-fact of their, supposed danger.
Yeah.
And one would hope that in general, the truth and facts will win out in these cases.
Yeah. And like the daughter spoke to an independent doctor to sort of uncover sort of some of the information that was given. So it's an interesting story. It's one that, I don't envy, anyone involved in it. I feel like even the mother who is anti-vax, I feel sympathy for her, because she honestly thinks this is something that's going to harm her child. And, I'm frustrated because the evidence is pretty overwhelming that it won't, but I still have sympathy for her around thinking it will. And again, this falls into a slightly different than just, I don't want to get it. But this isn't, I don't want to get it and I'm grumpy, I can't go to the store now. This is, I don't want my daughter to get it and now it's being forced. Like that is a little different. And like I said, I think this one very much skirts the line of where my discomfort comes in. But especially in a case where there are, two parents at odds like this. Unfortunately, that is when the courts need to step in on so many cases when it comes to, parents who are at odds. So.
Yeah. Sask Party MLA resigns from caucus for misrepresenting her vaccination status. And according to the release, all the other Saskatchewan Party MLAs are fully vaccinated.
Yeah.
Nadine Wilson had to resign, or did resign. I don't know if she was pushed out in a sense, but she apparently said that she was vaccinated in multiple ways, and she wore a "I'm vaccinated" button when she was on an interview or something, and it just turns out she's not, or she wasn't.
Yeah, was lying, and it's to some extent the opposite of what's happening with a lot of right-wing politicians, where you're hearing a lot of, and probably this is more so in the US, but a lot of right-wing politicians who stand up and rail against the vaccine and side with the anti-vaxxers publicly, all the while they were first in line to get vaccinated months and months ago.
Yep.
Like they've been vaccinated for over 6 months, literally first in line, jumped the queue to get it.
Yeah.
All the while publicly railing against it. This is sort of the opposite. This is someone who said they were vaccinated when weren't and lying about it.
Yep.
Which, yeah, like, as an MP, when you lie about shit that people care about, you resign. That's sort of what's been happening in politics for a couple hundred years now, right? Like, that's just, tends to be, and again, sometimes you can weather the storm. I will not be surprised in any way, shape, or form if she's quietly brought back into caucus a year from now. Right.
Yeah,
she didn't step down as an MLA. So she's still going to be in the legislature. She's still going to vote. She may even still have roles on various committees. I don't know, if she's stepping down from any committee duties or anything like that.
Right. Yeah.
But like, so she'll still be there. And when the dust settles, when hopefully COVID subsides, when it's not the story of the day anymore, my guess is she'll be quietly brought back in. And this will just be one of those things that sort of scuttles her from cabinet, maybe. But like, even then, the Sask party has not shown that scandal is really a disqualifying factor for cabinet in this party. So,
yeah, that's right. I guess we've got another article that's kind of related. I'm not gonna like bring it up, but it's from panow.com, where she speaks about how I am being penalized for her position. Like, I guess I know in the other article it says that she was resigned, but in this one she goes into it kind of saying like that it wasn't because she wanted to leave the Sask party.
Right. Which, like, resigned is often a euphemism in politics, right? Like, that's it's how often do you, like, when someone fucks up badly in politics, they quote unquote resign, which is they get a tap on the shoulder from the premier or prime minister or president or governor or whoever, the whip, and told, hey, like, we're asking for your resignation, or you need to resign or you're getting kicked out. And it's way more embarrassing for you if you're kicked out. And the resign could very well be exactly what I said, right? Like, one of the reasons why people resign instead of fight tooth and nail is when the quieter the resignation, the easier it is to slide them back in a year later.
Right. Right.
So, but yeah, like, if she's being asked to leave or forced out, like, yeah, that's how this works. That's the game you signed up for. Like, like, representative politics I'm the first one to say I don't like the power of parties in Canadian politics. I think we need to pull power out of the party system. It's one of the reasons why, when it comes to electoral reform, I'm not a huge fan of proportional representation, because the MMP models always shift more power into the party hands rather than to the hands of the individual MLAs or MPs, and why I much prefer other forms of electoral reform like ranked choice balloting or instant runoff, things like that. But with a case like this, it's like, the party gets to kick you out, and then you get to sit as an independent still. So like, you don't have a right to be in that party because there's rules built in. And if they think you're an embarrassment, they can ask you to leave. And for any reason, like, if a politician, do something, I don't want to come up with some sort of bizarre, weird example, but like,
if they, for example, were convicted of drinking and driving.
Sure. No, that doesn't get them kicked out, though. But like, a politician embarrasses themselves royally, spills spaghetti all over themselves, and does a pratfall, and does something ridiculous and embarrassing, but nothing immoral or illegal, but just it's embarrassing and it humiliates whatever. The party still has the ability to say, you're an embarrassment to the party, get out. They often won't, because in most legislatures, the balance of power is tight enough that losing an MP, it has to be weighed against things. But like,
Yeah, like
the SAS
didn't we
party could kick
before-
out 10 members and still have an overwhelming majority. Like, they don't have to be cautious on who they kick out of caucus.
Yeah, that's right. And I guess a decent example might be like before the election, before this provincial election, there was a QAnon SAS party member who was subsequently removed from the SAS party.
Yeah. Yep.
So it happens all the time.
It happens all the time. And it's not unique. And the whole, like, because I'm standing up for my beliefs thing is a bit of a red herring as well.
Yeah.
Because she didn't. Like, if she's anti-vax, she didn't stand up for her beliefs. Like, that's different. And like, standing up for your beliefs is saying, I will not get the vaccination. And if they kick me out of the party for it, so be it. And they might have kicked her out of the party for it. I don't know.
Yeah, that's right.
And we will never know because she didn't do it.
Yeah.
She didn't stand firm on her beliefs. Yeah. Because these aren't deeply held beliefs. So it's.
Yeah, no, that's right.
This sort of touches back on kind of two themes we've had already. One is sort of people having consequences for things they've said or done. And two, sort of one of the things I was sort of expressing earlier is frustration with all the bullshit. We've talked about Kyle Anderson on the podcast before.
Yeah, big fan.
I'm a big fan. And there was a circumstance recently where he tweeted out about a prominent anti-vaxxer who had run as a MP under the People's Party, and was one of the loudest voices. And there was rumors going around that he was in the hospital for COVID. And it sounds like Dr. Anderson essentially called the hospital. At least sort of the way he positioned it, he called the hospital and said, hey, I'd like to send a gift to this guy. We are political adversaries, but if he's in the hospital, like, I still want to send a token of appreciation, a gift basket, because I don't want anyone to die from this. Like, no matter, and it goes back to what I was talking earlier, like, doctors don't want people getting sick. But he basically said, I want to send a gift basket to this person, because in spite of him and I falling on literally polar opposite ends of the spectrum on this, he's still someone I've interacted with. I still have compassion for him. I still want to wish him well. And was told, no, you can't send a gift basket because he's in the COVID ward. And he tweeted about that. Right. Which is now being considered sharing public health information, and likely is. He has now apologized for it. So he's tweeted a couple times. Initially, he said the tweet, then he sort of did a follow-up explaining how he got the information. Then he sort of sent out a non-apology, a clarification.
Okay.
Which I probably think it was fine at that point. He sort of said, I write this note to correct erroneous information and assumptions circulating online. Yesterday, a detractor of COVID science and evidence-based policies was claimed by others to have been taken to the hospital. He then continues on and says, like, I did not reveal any information that I obtained through, like, quote, like, inside channels, essentially. But then he did come out and say, no, I got carried away. I was pissed. I was angry. That's like, I crossed a line I shouldn't have. I shouldn't have tweeted about him being in the hospital at all. I'm just really frustrated at he didn't say it this way, but I'm really frustrated at all the bullshit that's been going on. So,
I mean, he's a human being, right?
Yeah.
So, we're all, like you say, we're all getting very frustrated with the bullshit.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that this seems, maybe I'm doing it's the term two-cock fallacy or the whataboutism, but
okay.
One of the things that stood out to me as the story was going on, after Dr. Anderson talks about this, the Dean of Medicine publicly posts how I'm aggrieved that any member of the College of Medicine would have private information and and goes on to basically publicly chastise Dr. Anderson through Twitter. And part of me is like, okay, if we're worried about privacy, and if this whole story is about privacy,
right?
Should the dean of a college be publicly chastising one of their employees. Like, should the dean be handing out discipline through Twitter? Because if this is a disciplinary issue that Dr. Anderson needs to be speaking to his boss about, his boss probably shouldn't be informing him of that through Twitter.
Yeah.
That is at least as much a privacy issue as, hey, I called the hospital and they said he's in the COVID ward.
Yeah, that's right.
Because Dr. Anderson didn't get information that you or I couldn't have gotten. Like, that wasn't information he got by being a member of the College of Medicine. No. Because he's a doctor, probably did skirt some of those ethical lines. And I'm not the one to, I don't know what it says in his contract or what the oaths and all of that say.
They quite likely have, like, at the very least, they have like a higher ethical guide, right? So he did admit he crossed the line. Yeah. So it's one of those things where I just, there's a lot going on in that story that doesn't pass the sniff test. The fact that we've had so many stories over the last 18 months of when someone gets sick, and it's COVID related and their name is in the news because of it, that it seems weird that the biggest thorn in the side of the premier over the last year and a half all of a sudden is getting chastised publicly by the dean of medicine. The second something enters into a gray area. And I don't want to sound like a paranoid conspiracy nut. And I know I kind of do. It seems. But I mean, to give you a bit of a bone here, people with power and influence use that power and influence to sometimes, get people in trouble, to, affect other people's lives if they don't like what they're saying.
Yeah.
It's.
So anyways, I think it's still a story that people should know about. Especially. It's not a story that I'm going to stop supporting, Dr. Anderson over. No. So, and especially as his, as his political aspirations, may grow, because I think, he has not hidden the fact that he is a strong NDP supporter. He's interested in current politics at some point. He's a big believer that, science has a place in politics. So, he spoke at the NDP convention, or is going to, one of the two. So his name is not going to disappear after this passes. And I think we're going to be hearing about him again in the future. So, it's important to know.
All right. Court throws out a challenge to Saskatchewan's proof of vaccination policy. An application argued Saskatchewan's vaccination policy is a violation of charter rights. Yeah. So this is a lot like the Human Rights Tribunal saying that they're not going to be taking these cases.
Yep.
The Court of Queen's Bench Justice in Saskatoon ruled against the group, arguing that proof of vaccination is a violation of their Charter of Rights and Freedoms.
Yeah.
So I would, I would expect it to go this way.
Yeah, and I think you're going to see different groups doing different avenues. The court application was brought by the former PPC candidate Mark Friesen, who may or may not be related to previous stories we've discussed, as well as the concerned citizens of Estevan and the United Grassroots. These groups spring up. I would be wary of calling them grassroots because I suspect there's a bit of astroturfing going on.
There's definitely some astroturfing going on.
And the nice thing about all of this, if there's anything nice that comes out of it, is the group has been ordered to pay $5,000 in costs to cover the court costs, because it's basically been ruled
it's a waste of time.
It's a waste, not content to just bog down our healthcare system. I might as well bog down the legal system as well.
Yeah.
But again, it wasn't just this was settled or that it was ruled in one way or another. it was ruled that they not only lost, but they failed to show any evidence that that proof of vaccine requirements would cause irreparable harm. This
Right.
wasn't just you lost based on, it was no, you don't even have a leg to stand on. Get the fuck out of our courtroom. Which good. Hopefully there'll be less of this.
Yes.
Again, the downside of it being, these do set precedent. So when there are cases that are slightly more gray, I do have some worry about that, down the road, but we can't get too worried about the slippery slope when there's a concern here and now. So,
yeah. And a thing like something like this, I suppose we could be concerned that they might, if they have appropriate backing to do it, they might be appealing this kind of thing and trying, going, it might make it farther into the court system if they can, convince the next judge or something like that. But at this moment, this was the right ruling and this is the right situation. This is press progress. I know right-wingers will dismiss this.
They are the Fox News of the left.
But this is not something that is terribly easy to dispute.
Yeah. The study itself isn't from Press Progress. They're just reporting on a study. Yeah.
So Saskatchewan's infrastructure funding value for money test is biased towards privatization, according to a new study. Mm-hmm. So the assessment tool for infrastructure funding in Saskatchewan and other Western provinces has a lock-in bias towards public-private partnerships, which almost always means more private than public.
Yeah. And one of the jokes I've been saying for years is I'm so old that when a government siphoned money out of infrastructure projects into the pockets of their friends, it was just called embezzlement rather than a P3 project.
Yeah, that's right.
But essentially P3s are legalized embezzlement. There's a public infrastructure project that needs to get built. The government, instead of hiring people to do it, hires someone to hire someone to do it.
Yeah.
And so this middleman takes their cut, and they wouldn't do it if there wasn't a profit. And I know the right wing philosophy, and that it is one of these things that is assumed to be true just by virtue of it being said over and over and over again, is that the private sector is more efficient than the public sector. But on this type of scale, it's not. It's not. Because you're if Bob the construction worker is being hired by a private company, or Bob the construction worker is being hired by the province, he doesn't care. I've never met someone who says the amount of work they are going to do in a day is based on who 8 levels up is paying them, right? No, there's other things that do impact that, but it doesn't make things more efficient. We know that. Studies have shown that time and time and time again. And this study is just one more that showed P3s are getting recommended right off the hop. They aren't really doing a proper level of due diligence. There's this soft lock-in where P3s get sweetheart deals for corporations, and oftentimes politicians then later on join those same corporations they've given them sweetheart deals to. This is absolutely 100% conflict of interest. We know they are these organizations who end up making profit off of the P3 deals have lobbyists offer consulting positions. The politicians then again start working for them when they're done. It's the accounting that gets done to prove that the P3 projects are more efficient tend to be done by accounting firms who themselves are being employed by the very lobbying groups that support the creation of P3s. Like it's,
Yeah.
it is legalized embezzlement. It drives me nuts. And one of the things is like reverse economy of scale, where the governments are not small. Like if we're talking about provincial and federal level governments, they are not small entities. Even Saskatchewan, like Saskatchewan's not a giant province, a giant economy, but it's still a provincial government.
Yeah.
They have the economies of scale to hire directly. And P3s are not just tendering contracts, right? Like it's P3s also involve corporations then owning parts of the finished project and can continue to charge the government over time. So like
they get paid for the project, and then they get perpetual free money after the fact.
Yeah.
Because usually the government picks up the maintenance cost.
Yep. Which they're not supposed to, the whole point. But I think a lot of people have this idea that a P3 is just simply the government's hiring a company to do stuff. Like that's just tendering a contract. That is not a P3.
No.
So like if the government needs to build a road, sometimes you'll have public works employees who actually work directly for the province working on it. Sometimes you'll have the government hiring individual construction companies, or contractor, like,
they'll put out a tendering contract.
That's not a P3. A P3 is a partnership where the government and a company sort of co-own the end project. And again, companies don't do that unless they are making a profit. And profit is just like it's siphoning off revenue for no reason for the province. They have no incentive to do this. And again, like I said, I said I would try not to go off on this, but it's one of those things where the economics of it are so black and white, and
right.
It feels like it's a centrist idea, or some people even see P3s as a left-wing alternative to privatization, but it's not. It's like to some degree, it's even worse than privatization.
Right.
Because at least in privatization, if something is privately owned, at least the government's not on the hook for siphoning public money into a private corporation.
Yeah.
But that's what these are. These are like literally siphoning public money into a private corporation.
Yeah.
Ask me how I really feel. Sorry, I ranted there. So what are your thoughts?
Well, no, I basically in the same boat. I see private public partnerships as a inroad to pure privatization of various infrastructure projects. And I'm anti that. So there's also a link in our show notes that I'll include in the published episode. It's to sellingsaskatchewan.ca. I know any right-wingers are going to just look at this and they're going to dismiss it, but it's a list of things that have been sold off to private industry or are in the process of it. Yeah. So it's, I think it's a good resource, but not everybody's going to like that.
Yeah. That said, in the Press Progress article that you shared, it links directly to the study. And
right.
Like the nice thing about studies is regardless of who did the study, because if you think the think tank that did the study in the first place is not a legitimate source, that's fine. But you can still look at the raw data in the study. Yeah. You can still look at their methodology. So
which is, I encourage anybody to go and do. Look at the black and white numbers, see what you think. The Regina Co-op Refinery complex is announcing 54 layoffs in a call for needed for sustainability, which of course the union disagrees with. I also disagree with it. I think sustainability means they need to maintain the same profit level. So when and it's the employees that take the hit. Yeah. It's over 50 people losing their job here at the refinery. So I know people who work there. I know most people in Regina know of somebody who works there. Yeah. And it's just, it's frustrating. And I know there's a kind of a fuel shortage or what have you. There's a reason that the price of fuel is currently at $1.43 per liter. But I would think that if you're going to raise prices, that would also feed into maintaining your employee base. So the Crown revises sentencing position in assault case following Gladue report. So Louis George's history, he was found guilty of, I believe it was stabbing a man. Aggravated assault. Yeah, for stabbing. And the Crown actually had his history brought forward and discussed, and they actually backed off of a more severe sentence in favor of a less severe sentence, saying that he needed rehabilitation and rather than just punishment. So I think this is a bit of a bit of a good story coming out of the courts, which you don't see very often. Yeah. I think that maybe just, I don't know, maybe just off the top of my head, we should always be taking personal history into account. And when we consider sentencing, if we're going to continue on with the carceral system.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Just my thought.
Yep. No, I think you're right. I'm opposed to the carceral system in general. So
yeah, not a fan.
It's. I think this is a positive story. In so much as the most recent part of it is a positive development. Like the whole story is awful. Right. It is the story of someone who went through a very difficult life, found themselves in a very difficult spot. Addictions is a healthcare issue. Now, obviously, the assault is not, but the two are tied together.
Right. One doesn't just assault people because, in general, people do not just assault other people because they enjoy assaulting people. There's reasons, there's a past that leads up to it. There's a cause for that effect. Yeah. So if we could maybe study that cause and mitigate those things and take those into account, even at the sentencing point, like that's, I think, pretty important.
Yeah. And one of the things that always comes up is, what is the purpose of a criminal justice system? What type of justice are we looking for? Is the purpose to keep people safe? Is the purpose to move on with healing of victims? Is the purpose to punish the guilty? We claim it's not the latter, but oftentimes a lot of the decisions, when I say we claim, the foundational aspects of our working model, of our, constitutional framework and legal framework is that, what we do is not about punishing the guilty, in most cases. Like, there are punitive elements within civil cases. But this is supposed to be about rehabilitation. This is supposed to be about public safety. And we should be looking at an evidence-based approach to public safety and focusing on punishing people strays away from that. And again, we know that this is not like it is unstudied science. So
yeah, it's just, so I guess in a sense we ended on a less somber note.
No, it's a good, again, it's awful what led to that point, but it is good that there is the Gladue report came out, and it is good that the Crown, in light of that, has been swayed by a combination of both the Gladue report and George's lawyer. Kudos to I believe Jill Drennan is the lawyer that in question, and made a strong case for leading on a path of healing, leading on a path of rehabilitation, as opposed to focusing on a path of punishment and vengeance. So,
okay. Well, I think that's all we've got for you today. So with that, you can find us at anchor.fm/frommanypeoples. Our Twitter is at skpoliticspod. Our Facebook is facebook.com/frommanypeoplesstrengthpod. You can email us at frommanypeoples@gmail.com. Or if you want to give us a couple bucks, you can buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/frommanypeoples.
well, thanks again for doing all the work, Cory, and letting me just show up and rant. This was a much more ranty episode than I've done lately. I've sort of fell back into some bad habits, but I appreciate you putting up with me while
It's perfect. It filled exactly the right amount of time.
Excellent. All right. And I will see you again in 2 weeks.
You bet.